I'm Carla Hinton here in the studio with Kenneth Behr, who is president of the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. The organization is made up of more than 2,000 charitable, religious, missionary, social, and educational tax-exempt nonprofit organizations. Now, financial matters are always a hot topic at this time of year with tax season upon us. And plus, there are recent events both locally and nationally have brought the importance of fiscal accountability among faith-based organizations to the forefront. So we really thank you, Mr. Behr, for coming in to share information with us.
Thanks, Carla.
First, what is the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability's mission?
Okay, well, I'm going to make it easier for you. The Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, we call it ECFA.
I like that.
Instead of 17 syllables, we just go by 4.
Okay.
ECFA has been around for almost 30 years, and we're an accreditation agency. Okay. In the same way that colleges and universities are accredited by organizations, we provide a seal of accreditation to evangelical charities.
Okay. All right. Now, late last year, the issue of fiscal responsibility among faith-based organizations was highlighted when news of financial troubles at Oral Roberts University began to surface. And then there was a congressional probe into the ministries of 6 televangelists that was implemented. Now, in your opinion, how do such matters or happenings affect the faith world?
Well, they do affect it. You know, and I don't like quoting Scripture too often, but in 1 Corinthians it says that we all suffer together. That when any one member suffers, we all suffer. When any member is honored, we all rejoice. So we do all rise or fall together. That's why ECFA is there. The whole reason of ECFA is to provide a standard for organizations to set their sights on, so that we avoid problems of financial accountability, integrity, fraud, those types of issues.
Okay. And now you are here in Oklahoma, and as it so happens, I believe that you have met with someone who's connected now with ORU.
Yeah, recently we heard, we were, just like everybody else, we were watching what was going on at Oral Roberts University, and they're not a member of ECFA.
Okay.
We don't have any direct connection. At the same time, the evangelical community is relatively small. We know each other very well. So when it was happening, it was also very concerning to us. And then we heard of the Green family and their offer to infuse some cash into the university based on some conditions.
Right.
And of course, as I'm reading the article, I'm finding that one of the conditions is that they'd like them to become members of the ECFA.
Okay.
Now, that's not unusual for us. It's, in fact, that many of our members come because donors who know of ECFA are asking them to make sure that they have financial transparency and accountability and good governance, and they know that ECFA is a good source for that.
Okay.
In answer to your question, yes, I've just recently met with Mark Green, and we had a great conversation. First time I met him, I feel like I've met a new friend. He's a good guy, has a tremendous amount of confidence that ORU has a tremendous reputation. In fact, I saw the accreditation letter from the college accreditation agency. They have a very high standing, very good students, very good faculty. So it's just a matter of trying to get their governance back on board. Okay. And so we're here to help.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Now, I know that your organization often offers tips for churches and other faith-based groups that are interested in maintaining their integrity in regards to fiscal responsibility. Can you share one or two of those recommendations?
Sure, real easily. One of the things that I talk about is that every organization has to have policies, practices, and procedures that are aligned. Okay. It's one thing to have a policy, but what do you really practice? Okay. So they need to be aligned, and that's the first thing. The second thing we say is that as organizations grow, it's very important that their internal controls, their oversight, their financial accountability is at a level that's commensurate with the size of the organization. Okay. Many people have asked me, is there something particular about these organizations that have inquiries? They're faith-based organizations, they're charismatic organizations. Is there something about the mega churches, for example, that's causing some problems? And I say no. It isn't really a matter of denominational preference or preaching style. It really is a matter of the size. Okay. As organizations grow, they need to have good financial people. Okay. Boards of directors are extremely important. In fact, in direct answer to your question, I would tell you that every organization needs to understand two things really well. Number one is that every nonprofit needs to have an independent board of directors. All right. Now, an independent board of directors, from our perspective, means that the majority of the board are not family members, nor are they employees of the staff. It's not unusual if you and your family, you and your husband, or my wife and I start a small nonprofit. When we get started, it's just the two of us.
Right.
And maybe our board includes my brother or my dad. Well, that's fine when you get started, but But quite frankly, as you start growing, you really need to have an independent board, because I can't be trusted to make all the decisions of the organization.
Okay.
I need accountability. Okay. So as the head of an organization, especially a founder like an Oral Roberts, it's very important that at some time they make a transition to have truly an independent board of directors that can perpetuate the organization and make the right decisions. Okay. That's number one. Number two is transparency. Right. We think that if an organization has nothing to hide and anybody can see what they're doing financially, then donors can make the right decisions whether they want to support that organization or not.
Okay. All right. That's very interesting. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's tax season, and I know the IRS has made some changes that affect churches and faith-based organizations. Can you talk about this?
Well, it's interesting. We are right in the middle of that. Just recently, the IRS, over the last 2 years, has been circulating drafts of what's called a new 990. Okay. Now, most of your viewers and your listeners don't know what a 990 is, but just like you and I have to fill a tax reform, a tax bill out every year, so then every April we have to fill in our tax statements, and corporations need to do the same thing. Nonprofit organizations, even though they don't pay tax, have to fill out a 990, which is the equivalent of a tax form. It basically identifies income, expenses, assets, and liabilities of an organization, as well as their mission and their board of directors and their top donors. Those are some of the basic things that statement has. Okay. Well, it hasn't been revised in 25 years. But even though it hasn't been revised, the IRS continued to change the instructions on what to put in the forms. Okay. So what was happening is they were actually asking for information and say, well, in this form and on this line, put this information in. And you say, well, that's not what it says. Well, that's what we're looking for. Okay. So it was overdue for them to have a new form. ECFA is a Washington-based ministry. We represent the evangelical ministries as well in Washington and keep our eyes open on those types of things. So we participated. We have friends in the IRS, and we work with them and tried to encourage them to have the very best form. Now, it's still a government forum, and it's never quite what you'd expect it to be, but it's a government forum. Right. It's kind of like the best we can do with the situation we have. Right. The one thing I'm very happy about is that we were able to do a couple of things. One of the things was there was some extraneous performance measurements that we felt were a little bit inappropriate. For example, one of the questions on the draft of the forms, right in the middle of the form, said CEO's salary as a percentage to total dollars, total revenue coming in. Well, from a cursory point of view, that might sound like a good idea. I'd like to know if they're overpaying the CEO. Okay. But at the same time, remember that 80% of, or 75% of all nonprofits have less than $500,000 in income. Right. So for a small nonprofit, the percentage of the CEO's salary, even if it was very modest, $40,000, $50,000, could be relatively large. A person, maybe let's put it real simple. Let's say an organization has $100,000 worth of income and has a $50,000 CEO. 50% of the income goes to the CEO, which may seem high unless you know the facts. Right. At the same time, a multi-million-dollar ministry could actually be overpaying their CEO and have a very small percentage. Okay. So we just brought that to the IRS's attention, and they agreed with us ultimately.
Well, this is interesting. Now, if people want to know more information about your organization and maybe get some of these tips, where should they go?
Oh, that's great. Great lead for me. Our organization is the ECFA, so our website is ecfa.org. Okay. And you're right, just like churches don't require people to attend the church to be members, we're the same way. If people would like to come onto our website, even register for our newsletter, our monthly newsletter that has all kinds of tips on governance and financial accountability, all they have to do is register on our website. They can receive that free of charge. And our website has over 700 articles on it, everything from clergy tax and how to play clergy to things like governance, to fundraising activity, to the role of an audit committee. So there's a lot of very interesting articles on the website, and they're completely free.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing this information. This is Carla Hinton reporting for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com.